Hey everyone, I thought I'd do a short video on how you can use applenotes to write a short 2 to 3 page essay or article. And the audience for this would be anybody who is working on an assignment, maybe an undergraduate, you could even be advanced high school undergraduate, or even early graduate school. In many cases, you have to write essays or articles that are short and concise, and we can contain this all within applenotes. Now, I understand that most of you are going to be under the constraints of how you might use AI and large language models to help you through this process. My goal in this video is to use AI or large language models where it makes sense, but not have it write the entire essay for you. And how you manage that is really up to you. But applenotes provides a very good framework to contain it all in one application, to work through an essay problem or an essay question, and do all the research, gather all the information, and actually write the first draft. So let's just dive right in. There's a few things you're going to want to set up first, and I'm going to show some examples later about this. But what you're first going to want is, of course, your core essay draft folder in applenotes. You're going to want a description of what this is. So what is the assignment for? What is the article going to be about? And you need to have a verbal description in a note. Then we're also going to want a note for a set of AI prompts, and I'll talk about those in a little bit. Want a concept map or concept table of key concepts regarding this particular article or essay. And then you're going to want a separate research folder for books, articles, PDFs, anything related to the topic that you're gathering and you're doing your research on. And then finally, you're going to want a shortcut that merges things together into a draft document. And if you don't know how to do that, I have an earlier video that shows you the shortcut and actually gives you an example on how to do that. So what I'm showing you here is an actual example from an undergraduate astronomy class. And you can see the first thing I did is I just have a folder called classes, the semester I'm in, the actual class number, and then an essay folder, because that's going to be one of the assignments under that class, and a research folder within that essay. And then you can see what the actual description of this assignment was. And this is actually a real assignment that I have found. It's about the local group of galaxies, and it wants you to write, basically discuss the most important research findings related to the local group and the environment and how dark matter plays a role. So we're going to use this as the actual example to start building out that draft. Another thing you see here is I like to have tags that tie the actual class name and the semester I'm in, so that, for example, even things like the research notes have these same tags. And if I need to see those all together, I can just click on that tag. And I mentioned earlier, I also create a note that has all of my AI prompts. So this is my Apple Intelligence Large Language Model prompt list. And you can see here I've created a prompt that is supposed to help me create an outline for the essay. And I'm going to use that essay description as input for this prompt. Okay, you can see here I've added the tags for the class. So the key thing about this prompt is I want it to create a draft outline for me. And it may not be the outline I actually use, but at least gets me started. And I think this is a good way to use a large language model initially when you're trying to bring all the topics together. So you can see I just said create an outline for the essay, focus on the local group of galaxies, the formation, unsolved problems, and any other possible topics. But this is important. Keep the original text at the top of the note, don't delete it, and number only the main sections, etc. So that is my prompt. All right, so all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to copy that prompt. I'm going to go back to the original description of the essay. And I'll go to the Apple Intelligence button, go to Compose, paste in the prompt, hit enter, and let it execute. Now this is going to create a draft outline of that project, and whether you use that is up to you. Okay, you can see the draft outline that it created has introduction, composition, formation, etc. Really a lot of good concepts and a structure that I can kind of wrap my head around. Now my essay may not follow this actual outline, but at least gives me all the inputs I need for the next step of a concept map that'll help me finalize that outline and that essay. So next thing I do is create that concept map, and I just paste that draft outline into a new note, and then I can just highlight that note, go into Compose, and I have a new prompt. And this prompt basically says, given this assignment, please create a table of key concepts about the topic, have the table with the term and the definition, and keep the original text. So we'll run that, and it'll go through this outline. And you can see what it did is it created a table for me with a term and the definition of key concepts. So this is perfect. This is something I can use with a mind map, or I could use my Apple Pencil on my iPad and just create a map of how I want this to come together. And then what I do is I take that draft concept map and I paste it into a new note, and I add another column called impact. This is something I do. You don't have to do this, but it's important for me just to understand what I think is the most important part of this essay, what's kind of important, what's of low importance. And I'll continue to expand this as I go, and it should help me work through the essay. And now, within minutes, you can see where we're at. I've created a draft outline. I've created a concept map. I now have 3 notes. I have the prompts, the outlines, and the map, and we're ready to start researching the essay. So if I jump down into the research folder, obviously there's a number of ways you can capture notes. And you can see here I've already gathered a few examples. First one is just a digital screenshot of a textbook that you can get out of Google Books. Next one's just a photo of a textbook I took with my iPhone. Next one is just a web article that has just been captured through Safari. And then a couple of PDF files that have just been attached. So how you do that is really up to you. But the key here is try to gather them all into your research folder. Now, one thing I want to call out here is I have formatted these research notes in a certain way so that I have a shortcut that can automatically create a bibliography. Of course, if you're writing a bigger paper, you typically would use a citation manager like Zotero or something like that. But this allows you to actually create your citations right here in applenotes, and the shortcut will automatically combine them together. So let's take a look at that format. Now, one of the constraints I want to mention is that shortcuts have trouble with long titles. So if you understand applenote structure, you have the title, you have the summary section. And the idea here is to create the actual citation in the summary section and just have the title be some shortened version of that. And what the shortcut will do is it'll combine it together. Now, you can obviously have this in any citation format you want. I have it in MLA, but it could be any other type of citation. But I'll show you an example of how this works with the shortcut. So basically, when I run the shortcut, it's just going to alphabetize the citations, and we'll create a new note with that alphabetized list. So if I run it, you can see here now I have bibliography. We'll open that up, and we can see now they're all alphabetized. Carroll, McConaughey, Morley, Vandenberg, Wentz. I'll bullet that just so you can see that a little bit easier. And I have my bibliography automatically created. So this is one way you can make it easy for yourself just to gather that information together. I'll provide a link to that shortcut in the description below. All right, the last step in this, of course, is just to take the notes. And the idea here is very similar to what I just showed you with the bibliography. I have a shortcut that can combine everything together. And the idea here is as you take notes, you're taking notes in sections. And you're going to put some of the highlights and copied information into each of these sections so it makes it easier for you to write that draft. Now, one of the things I did is I simplified that essay outline. You can see here's that original essay outline. And I came down and I tried to be more exact to what the assignment was here to discuss the most important research findings, etc. So I just simplified this down to 6 sections. And now the idea is going to be that as I pull information out of those research notes, I'm going to create 6 notes here. And in each note, I'm going to paste that information as a quote. And I'll have quoted notes in each section that makes sense for that section. And then the final step will be another shortcut that just combines that all together into a draft. And then I can just start writing. So now you can see what I've done. I've taken that outline and I've created a separate note for each section. And I've formatted this in a certain way because the merge notes, and if you looked at my previous video on how to merge notes together, the merging will use these as section headers. So let's just run it just to see what it looks like. So we'll just run this. And you can see there are the 6 notes, so I'll just pick those 6. And then I will put it in the essay folder. 6. And you can see the merge notes here. So now you can see how the structure of the essay is going to come together. And then any information I have in those notes will be added here. All right, I'll use an example. You can see here I added information into each of those notes. And if you look here, it's an exact quote. So one thing you want to be aware of is you want to make sure that anything you've copied has quote marks around it so you don't accidentally put direct copies into your essay. And you have a link back to the actual source. And that's important because as you're writing, you want to make sure that you're citing correctly and you know where you got your information from. So let's run that shortcut again using these 6 notes. I'll select the 6. And then I'll put it in the essay folder. If I could type, essay week 6. And now you'll see the merge notes appear, and you have an actual structure of the essay itself. Now, I wouldn't necessarily do it this way. I'd probably be rewriting each section in the note, in the original note, but you could also just combine this all together as one and then start writing from this structure using these notes. But remember, one thing I said here, the quotes are very important to have, so you don't make that mistake. And here you have that actual reference for each of those. And that's extremely important. Well, at this point, you'd probably want to move your draft into an actual word processing program. Maybe share it to Apple Pages or use Google Docs, Microsoft Word, or LibreOffice. That's a place to finalize the essay. Now, you could finalize it here. You could do some tricks here to make the document look better and get the feel of a word processor. But you're probably going to want to have some of the footnoting capabilities and all the other capabilities that you get in a word processor. So I would recommend doing that. But that pretty much concludes how you can actually build an essay easily with Apple Notes and use it as kind of the launch pad to get your essay completed. I hope you found that very useful. I think it's a great way to kind of combine things and build as you go and utilizes the power of Apple Notes and shortcuts together. I will be sharing both shortcuts in the description below so you can utilize those. But I hope you found this useful overall for any of your essays or articles. As always, I appreciate all the subscribers. This channel, again, is just being built, and subscribing is free, and it really helps it. I'll have more tips coming out in the future. So take care, everyone, and have a great day.